Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when we come for you, bad boys? Yo, it's us. Welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. If you didn't guess, that was an alternative intro song, because we got a couple of maybe one or two good feedback comments about our intro music. But it's the Improvement Season podcast. Welcome back. It is me, Mike Challis, and on the other end, it is my friend, my coach, and my colleague on the Improvement Season, Steve Hall. How's it going, Steve?
You're officially, Mike, the co-host.
Co-host.
Or we're both co-hosts. Like we don't have the Improvement Season doesn't have a host, does it? I guess. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Well, the only song I'm really bad. Like Mike, my memory is very selective, and with music lyrics, I'm terrible for knowing like, the lyrics to songs. I only know the lyrics to, or some of the lyrics to "Baby Got Back." Do you know the song?
Baby got back. That one?
No. I don't know what that one is.
I don't know. I don't.
Or you might know it as "I Like Big Butts" and I Can't Lie.
I can't. I don't even know what that song
Oh, I'm not going to try and sing it because you'll have to search it afterwards. Baby Got Back. Use it on your stories over on Instagram when you're doing like a hip thrust, and it works.
is. But I was going to say, you're great at anime songs because when we were at the Comic-Con, you were like, boom, 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 boom.
I know, like, I can recognize it and know what it is, but I could never sing you the intro to, like, man, the amount of times I must have heard some of these intro songs to animes, but I could never, like, actually, it's because I'm very selective, like, stuff, if I don't deem it something that I need to hold on to, it just comes in one ear and goes out the other, because otherwise it's just going to knock something else out, like a pin or a password.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? That it makes sense because there's still a lot that we don't know about memory, but some of the things that I think they found about memory is that one, we tend to remember things that have a big emotional impact. So if it's made us feel a certain way or whatever, then we're more likely to remember it. But also other things such as, smells or, other things such as that, they really help ingrain the memory into us, which is why, like, again, like maybe something felt made us feel a particular way, we're more likely to remember it. So and if something isn't, it's not evoking a particular memory, or you've got other important things to think about, then we're not going to remember it.
Do you have any smells that make you remember certain events?
So, one thing that I would say is Lynx Africa. It reminds me of a school trip because I totally overdid the Lynx Africa on a school trip once, and I was
Doesn't
just
surprise
like,
me.
yeah, I did it. I overdid it.
Mine is just the smell of, it's a particular smell of biscuits. And that reminds me of holidays with my family because we'd go to the beach and my mum, or to the pool side, and she'd always have these, I think they're rich tea biscuits, like the most bland, basic biscuits. But I don't know, as a child, when you just run wild and then you're starving hungry, and I was just like, give me the biscuits. And I just have this like strong memory of that. So whenever I get a sniff of those biscuits, it's just like, I'm on holiday. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, but those digestives, those tea digestives, they're good, even though they're plain.
Digestive biscuits are nice. Rich
Yeah.
tea are a little bit different. You
Mm.
might not know the classic rich tea. They're a bit drier. They're lower in fat. They're lower calories because they're lower in fat, but it means they're drier and a little bit less tasty.
Uh, Maybe. I remember my mum once gave me these oat cakes and I thought they'd be really nice, but they were so dry. It was like eating cardboard. And I was like, whoa, I don't think I can get through these.
They're Nairns. The
That's
brand
it.
Nairns. Yeah. If you get the fruit ones, this is probably very British, maybe European. I doubt anyone in the US. But oatcakes they might have, but I doubt they have the brand of Nairns. But yeah, they're the oatcakes that you're saying, they're literally like oats and like a little bit of oil and salt, and it's just like they're pretty plain. Not bad if you're dieting. I've actually used those when dieting as like a substitute for like oats or a carbohydrate source. But yeah, if you're wanting like a nice tasting biscuit, you're better off getting like the ones that have like dark chocolate chips or dried fruit in there or ginger. I've had a bunch of them, as you can tell.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine that they are quite, yeah, for, for a diet, they're perfect.
Mike, we've both got our hats on,
Mm.
and that means it's actually warm in the UK. That actually doesn't mean it's actually warm in the UK because I wear a hat anyway because I'm bald, and you wear hats now. You've got one and you own it, and you want to wear it, but it's actually warm, right?
Very warm. Well, I say very. It's you're right. It is warm.
Comparative.
Compared, yeah, for sure. And it's just nice. It's nice to maybe just have one or two layers on now rather than having to take your coat and stuff. It's amazing how it just makes you feel so much better.
It's for me not so much the heat, but it's those. Yeah, like now, if the viewers could see it, and anyone in the UK probably are experiencing this, although this will come out a week later, so I don't know what the weather's going to be like then. But clear blue skies for me are just like, oh, it doesn't matter if it's cold outside at all. Actually, sometimes it's even nicer. If it's just a clear blue sky, I'm like, oof, I feel so. It just, yeah, brings out all the good feels for whatever reason. But as an update, then, the first half of the podcast, of course, we do some updates. Any
Indeed.
updates from you, Mike, that you want to let the listeners know about?
Yeah, so I guess the biggest update, which kind of we mentioned about it last time, is, obviously I've finished the general fat loss phase that we went through. So this has been the first week where I've come back up to what we decided. My step count was getting quite high. So what we've done is I've brought my step count back down to kind of 8 to 10K, and we're kind of keeping calories around maintenance, and that will kind of suffice as almost a bit of a surplus issue for the first couple of weeks. And then as things change, we can kind of bring up the calories as is appropriate. So, and it's just been nice. And I think you have that double whammy approach of not only do you have more food, more fuel in your system, but just psychologically, you feel better. You feel better knowing that, hey, I have got plenty of food. And also, I'm not going to be going into deficit calories anytime soon. Just that combined thing just makes you, it's made me feel just more energetic in and of itself, which has been great.
I know at times I've had clients who have checked in with me and they're just like, oh, Steve, I'm really strong with the diet. And this is outside of their check ins. They're like, can I have a refeed? And I don't always just say yes, but I have at times you said, like, we'll take the refeed. And then they check in with me during their check in. They'll be like, you know what? As soon as you told me I could have the refeed, I didn't feel like I needed it anymore. It's almost like when you get told you can do, like, have more, you aren't restricted. It then allows you to be like, oh, I can restrict. Whereas when you're forced to go down a certain route, it's like with Charlotte, if I ever tell her she has to do something, she will not do it. But if she
Mm.
chooses to do it, it's that old saying, you can't force a, like, you can take a horse to water, you can't force it to drink. Or if you give someone the option, like they have options, they're like, oh, actually, I can just stick to the one that I've got because now I know I'm not restricted. Not that that's what your situation was, but I completely get that immediate psychological reprieve. I felt that the most recent time was post show, like my final show of the season. I was just like, oh, like the sense of reprieve I got from just being like, hey, I'm not stepping on stage again for years now, and I
Mm.
can just drink this. I don't have to worry about this, don't have to worry about that. Like everything's just, I'd restricted so much, and even just having just no restrictions on fluids was like, ah, nice. So yeah, no doubt you're feeling the benefit of that. And you highlighted a really good point I do want to kind of push home for the listeners is many people at the end of a diet, they'll change multiple variables and they have to remember that. I was just consulting with someone about their peaking. Like I'm not peaking them, but they've got a photo shoot. They're a friend. They're just like bouncing around some ideas with me, and they're like, "Oh, a bodybuilder told me to reduce my steps from he's hitting like 15,000 regularly, and he said the day before I do the photo shoot, he said just like completely reduce them to like nothing, basically." And I was like, I mean, you could, but you have to take that in consideration with your energy expenditure, because if you don't change your carbohydrate intake or energy balance there, suddenly you're in way more of a surplus and excess there than you once were. So you don't want to change too many variables to extreme. And like you said there, we kind of kept you at where we kept your calories level at maintenance, but that was maintenance at that higher output. We reduce output, and now it's probably a small surplus for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that takes a bit of discipline in order to like say, hey, re control one variable at a time, because it is really tempting to say, oh, let's change this, let's change that. And no, just stick with one thing at a time, and then, go from there. So no, makes sense. What's going on
And
your end?
yeah, my end, I guess this time, wow, when will this come out? So this will come out. I'll be home by the time this comes out, but I am leaving tomorrow. So we leave. Our flight isn't actually till 8 p.m. So it's later in the day. So I've got a good chunk of time in the morning to, well, one, pack. I don't know if you can see behind me. I've got, you can at least see there's
Yeah.
a red hat and a green hat. I don't know how much the screen shows because it with Zoom it showed quite a lot of my background, but this one it condenses quite a lot. So anyway, there's a red and green hat I think is on show, and there's a bunch of clothing on that sofa, which is basically all my clothes that I'm taking. Charlotte's actually away this evening on like a work thing in Manchester, so she's got one of the suitcases, and so like we can't pack the suitcases yet, and obviously not obviously, but we want to spread like some clothes in one suitcase, some in another, just in case one of them gets lost or whatever, so you haven't lost all your stuff and you've got something available. But anyway, so should be able to pack tomorrow regardless. And you were just asking off air, oh, are you like winding down because you're like finishing? No, I'm still probably gonna do a fair chunk of work tomorrow, still going to train tomorrow as well. I've got time to go train. I won't get this full week in, but I'll just miss my final pool session unless I decide to. I won't double up because I just wouldn't be able to do that at all. But I might decide to just pull in some of those pulling exercises into it. I probably won't though, because I just want to focus on that one session at a time. But what am I saying? Yeah, so we leave to the Maldives. I think we spoke about that last time that I was going to the Maldives.
Yep.
So yeah, I just did a post literally now. I don't literally now. That's a bit strong. 2 hours ago, I posted saying I'm anxious, and it's something that I try to do when competing because I get anxious before stage. And I always try and change that anxiety to excitement because they're very, very similar in how you feel them as emotions within the body. And that's something I did really successfully for like competing and getting on stage and just changing that anxiety to actually, I'm excited about this. And I'm trying to get better about it for this. And I think I will once like we're at the airport, we're up in the sky, and we're on a smooth ride, like I'll start getting excited about it. And I am excited, don't get me wrong, but I'm anxious, and a large part of that anxiety comes from like a lack of control. I think bodybuilders, we don't have a lot of spontaneity. We love structure and routine, and we love control. And so I do really struggle to let go of that. But every time I do it, I benefit from it. And actually, from seeing the comments on that post, a lot of people related to it. Part of being self-employed and that element too, but also the kind of day-to-day structure in your routine. So yeah, I am excited for it. Definitely am. And it's a huge privilege. And like, what a thing to be anxious about. The fact that you're going on holiday and you can't work. Like, come on. There's much more larger issues at hand in the world, but still, I can't help that that's the way I feel about it. But yeah, I'm excited to then check in back with you once I'm home and talk about it all and reflect on it, because yeah, it's going to be a very different holiday, because typically, like when we went to New York, that's the typical holiday I go on. Busy, got kind of lots of things booked in to do, whereas this one is like the island that we're staying on takes like, I think it's like 20 minutes to walk around the whole thing. So it's tiny. And I'm like, wow, that could actually feel a bit, that might feel a bit strange, but hey, it's got a gym, there's water sports, I can stay active. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That's really the update. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, continued to match or beat performance this week. I thought some things might drop off, particularly today, but they still held strong. And actually, I think I could go, you asked about it. I think last time you're like, would you have deloaded sooner? And I was like, I don't think so. I think maybe I could go for another week if I was really on top of my sleep over this weekend. What I will say is one thing that really changed this week was I was waking up twice regularly, whereas in the night. So I was only waking up once kind of all the weeks prior, but consistently waking up twice. You know, that like you wake up like an hour before your alarm. It was kind of like that. That's a bit of a leading indicator to being a bit overreached, but joint connective tissue all fine, performance in the gym still good, motivation to train so, but I'm certainly not like hating it. Probably getting to that point where we sometimes get, Mike, with your training, where we're like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like, you might be able to maintain performance, but if you're like not super pumped to go train, you're not feeling like the best slept, the best recovered, are we just worth pulling back, even if it's just half a week, to then reload and go again? So I think that would be inevitable in the short term, but that's what the Maldives is for.
Yeah. And I'm interested. with the weights and loads that you're using at the moment, relative to your off-season pre-prep loads, is it similar, a little bit lower?
I'd have to check.
Mm.
But when I did last check, I'm certain my belt squat, I'm quite above where I was.
Oh,
I
okay.
think I'm at all-time PRs for belt squat and RDLs. So they're two that have definitely gone up quite a bit. I'd need to check my like pressing and pulling. I need to check because performance is such a great indicator for whether or not things have progressed in the right direction. What I will say is Tim Bowers, one of my clients, and he trains in the gym with me, and you obviously know Tim too. Great
Oh
guy.
yeah.
He actually said he thinks I'm looking like bigger than like pre-prep. He was like, it obviously I was like, is it just because I was lean for a long time and depleted? You saw me like real skinny. He's like, no, I think you're bigger than what you were last time you were at this body weight. You just look huge. He was just like, you just look huge. So yeah, I need to do like a comparison and maybe a formal check-in in here because that's where I
Mm.
was. I'm checking in often in the gym, like under similar conditions, but I might try and set it up maybe after my holiday. Or if I could do it before I go, that would be great, but I've got a lot on. But yeah, I'd like to compare because I feel like, I mean, the thing I always come back to, Mike, is am I doing everything in my power to progress and to see the result and outcome I want? Yes. I'm just so heavily focused on the process. And I will say, in my experience, I don't know if you'd agree with this, Mike, with your clients, the people who are so invested in the process, who don't even really worry too much about the outcome, they get to the outcome. They just do. It's inevitable.
Exactly. Mm. It's do you know what? I heard a really good like line the other day, and it was something like, um what was it? Like just something like, focused on the process but detached from the outcome. So, and it also comes in line with a Stoic saying, which says, it's almost like, I think it comes under like the reverse clause, which essentially is like, I'm going to do my best and I'm going to achieve X, fate permitting, which is just basically saying you're doing everything within your power, but ultimately it's fate permitting because, knowing that something could happen that's outside my control that could affect the outcome of, a certain thing. So it's like, hey, getting to the bodybuilding stage, I'm going to do everything within my power to be in the best possible condition and shape that I can be. But ultimately, the outcome is outside of my control. So I'm going to win a bodybuilding competition, fate permitting.
Yeah, I completely relate to that philosophy and mindset. And it baffles me. And actually, I don't know if I want to say credit to these people, but those who are just like, so like, they're like, I'm going to go pro, or I'm going to win this show. I'm going to be the best in the world. Or they truly believe like, I am the best in the world. I'm like, man, that kind of almost false sense of belief and pure blissful ignorance, like I could never be there because I'm so much thinking about the fact that I'm rational and understand that there's loads of things outside of my control. But from my understanding of some sports psychology that I'm not particularly well read in, there's actually something really to it, really believing in yourself that you are that person, even if in the end you're not, and it doesn't end that way. But you've got to be careful because if you have that sense of belief and attachment to it and then it doesn't pan out the way you expect it to, yeah, it's not ideal, but yeah,
It
focus on the
it just
process.
it destroys people, and I think it also you see this in other ways where it either it, if you the downsides to that sort of psychology of I will do it is if it doesn't pan out, then it kind of absolutely destroys them. But also maybe they go for the outcome, and it's so what I'm thinking of here is like people go pro at maybe a lesser competitive show or something like that, or maybe a different federation, and it's like, okay, you're a pro, but is it at the standard, that is pro worthy? I don't know if I'm making sense here at all. So maybe kind of like they're sacrificing something of themselves to for the sake of the outcome.
Yes, it's not exactly attached to how I was kind of talking through it, but I also understand. I hear of people pro card hunting, as it were.
Mm.
I've never really liked that approach. I've also seen it with people who have done like multiple qualifiers as far as I'm concerned, and I've always taken this approach, once you're qualified for finals, like finals is what matters. The qualifiers actually don't matter if you come third or first. You just got to qualify. Great example of that was in 2021 when Charlie beat me at the UKFBA. Sorry, I beat Charlie, Neil, at the UKFBA qualifier, but then that doesn't matter. It's how we perform at finals. And he beat me at
Mm,
finals. That's ultimately what matters.
mm,
So it's similar. And I've seen people do multiple qualifiers just to get a win. It's like, yeah, but that's not really like what matters. That's not really what it's about. So I totally get what you're saying there, Mike.
mm.
Any other updates on your end? How far through? We didn't talk about Naruto last time. How far through are you now?
Oh, do you know what? I got emotional last night again because I'm at the stage now where Naruto is taming the Nine Tails. So he's with Killer Bee, and it got to the stage last night where Naruto met his mum, and just I'm quite close to my mum, and so when he was like, "Oh, I love you, mum," and like, "Oh, I've missed you, and I always wanted to see you," and I was like, "Oh." So I was getting a bit emotional about that. But yeah, it's great. I mean, I'm just so like into it at the moment. It's just amazing. It's good.
How do you like Killer B as a character?
I like Killer Bee, because he's just himself basically, and he's quite. Again, I kind of relate to him a little bit because he's kind of just himself. He's always positive. He's always rapping, and he's just being him. So I quite like it.
I wasn't sure about him initially because I was like, man, is this guy going to be irritating? But he grew on me over time where I was just like, ah, I kind of get him now. Like that kind of, yeah. I don't, it's weird. It's a weird thing to say he's just being him because it's like you saying other characters within the show aren't being themselves. But I know what you mean by just being him, despite that being a weird way to describe it. I don't know if you know what I mean.
Kind of like he didn't, because people, because he loves to rap, and when he was sort of, I can't think of the word, when people were treating him poorly, he could have stopped rapping. He could have, not rapped as much, to try to just appease other people, but he decided not to. It's just him. I think, yeah, that's kind of what I mean.
Got you. Yeah, yeah. That added context. I forgot that was part of that. It's so long since I've watched Naruto. I need to kind of go back and rewatch it. But yeah, I'm still actually what I've been watching. Not anime really, because I'm almost finished with Hunter x Hunter. But like I said, I'm slow with getting through things. I've been watching Halo. I don't know if you ever played Halo on Xbox.
Oh yeah, I was
Oh,
big
you
into.
did.
Yeah, I played. I was big into Halo, but I didn't go. I only had the first Halo, and then because I was actually, I don't think you know this about me, but when I was maybe early teens, massive into Xbox, PlayStation, all of that stuff. But then
Which
as
so what
I
console did you have?
I had just the original Xbox, I had a PlayStation 2, not all at the same time, and PlayStation.
Ah, so you mixed and matched. It's like me. I was always, what was I? I can't remember what I was before iPhone, but I got an iPhone, and then I was like, everyone was just telling me Samsung's the same but cheaper, so I got a Samsung, and then immediately went back to iPhone. I was like, no, I stick with an iPhone. I was always PlayStation, so I had a PlayStation, PlayStation 2, PS3, and I think that's it. Yeah, I don't think I ever got past the PlayStation 3, which I think I got for my like 21st. So anyway, I think a PS5's coming out soon. But regardless, Halo, I played only at my friends. Like some friends had PlayStation, some friends had Xbox. This friend had an Xbox. I was always like, Xbox weird. Like you have weird games, whatever. But he loved Halo, and we would play that regularly. And so I have real fond memories of that. Talking about memories and like, so as soon as I heard the music, again evoking memories, the intro music to Halo is like the intro music to the game, I guess.
Hmm.
And yeah, it just evokes a really strong memory. And I didn't really know the storyline of Halo at all. I just knew there was like some aliens and there was Master Chief and he was super
Mm.
cool and the weapons were like crazy. But yeah, it's great. So I mean, you don't have Netflix, but it's on Netflix if you want to enjoy it. So that's been really good.
It would definitely bring back lots of memories for me because, like you said, Master Chief, Cortana, Ada's causing carnage in the background.
I can hear you though. Keep going. She's just being an absolute monster.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, like I said, I wouldn't have much to add there, just to say that it would evoke a lot of memories for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
Cortana, I had no even idea what that was or anything. So yeah, now I'm like, oh, it's the little voice in his head type of thing. So yeah, it's interesting.
does the film incorporate the flood?
Not that nothing like that's happened. It's a series. It's not a film.
Okay,
9 episodes.
gotcha.
So yeah, you're just learning about who, like, I guess who Master Chief is, and the fact that all the what are they called, uh, uh the group of people that are like Master Chief, and there's like a group of them. I've forgotten what they're called, but it's like a very common name for like that warrior type of individual, and they were like abducted from their parents and whatever. The parents were given like a fake mutant version that died, and all of this. Like he's just learning about it all, and they have
Really?
like chips in the back of their like spine that take away their ability to feel emotions, and like he removed his so he could feel emotion. So just going through all of this, so yeah,
That's wild.
it's yeah, it's good fun. Like I'm really enjoying it. Actually, I'm surprised how much I'm enjoying it. But anyway, that's the kind of TV and
Yeah.
gaming, and I haven't gamed in so long. Uh, kind of segment. We could get to some questions now, then, if
Yeah,
there's anything
we've
else.
the listeners are probably like, "Oh, that's enough."
I imagine a lot
Go
of the
on.
listeners are around our age, so I wouldn't be surprised if we have some people that were into Halo at least. And actually, this is a good time to say in the comments, let us know whether or not you're a PlayStation or Xbox. And I
Mm.
guess Nintendo could be one that some had as well.
It
I
fizzled
never
out for a
owned any of
time.
those.
It fizzled out, but then they came back with, I think it was the Nintendo Cube, and that was their like version for trying to rival Xbox and stuff. But I never felt it got to the same level as Xbox or PlayStation 2 or 3.
The games were a little more kiddie, weren't they? From my memory, I don't
Yeah.
really know.
It's
But
all
Sega
like,
was one as well,
I feel
or
like
same.
Sega and Nintendo 64, they were like the OGs of the console. Then PlayStation 1 came out, and that kind of was level, took them over. And then I think you had Xbox, maybe PlayStation 2, and they were like equalish. And then the Cube and blah, blah, blah.
Yes, yeah, it was some good times. Like I enjoy playing it now and then, but I don't think I could. There's times I've considered getting back into gaming, but and I know there are people our age as well who game, but yeah, I've just it's not something I have the time to invest into. Like I said, I don't even have that much time to watch anime sometimes. So
I
yes,
was going to
right.
say,
Q&A.
Q&A. Let's
So I
go.
think a couple of the questions we said last time there was 3 questions left over. I think I covered them on my story because I think they were
Okay.
asked on my story. One of them, I can't remember it now. It was regarding peak week. And I think peak week is such a large subject that maybe it's worth them visiting some of the peak week podcasts that we've done on the Revive Stronger podcast versus us trying to go into it here. We also have many presentations on the members site, which you could sign up to the members site, get access to all of them, or you might even be able to purchase them individually on the kind of store on the website. So yeah, I can't recall what that question was because I don't have it up. I don't know if you have it up or you can recall it, but
I've got it up, but not the previous one with the previous questions.
okay, let's just go through the new ones.
All
Uh,
right.
shall I start and you can answer?
Yeah, although, are we skipping the first one by Jesse Benson?
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, I'll just say, Jesse, thank you. He suggested that the hyperbolic time chamber, which is where these questions are coming from, which is my broadcast group over on Instagram, which is where you ask, which we mention every time. I've renamed the group now because he was like, why isn't it called the hypertrophic time chamber?
Mm.
And I don't really know, apart from I just had in my mind what the hyperbolic time chamber was, which is like basically a place to go train and get better. But yeah, hypertrophic time chamber is a nice little twist on it. So I've renamed the group to be that. So thank you,
Okay.
Jesse. We
Mm.
get to the next question though, which is from Mattis, uh, Loris Sens, and they've asked switching jobs and need to ride my bike to work to avoid traffic. 70 kilometers each day. How would I go about decreasing my volume, especially legs?
I think I feel like, again, I might be oversimplifying this, but I think a couple of things. I think first you could think about rearranging your split. So depending on, say, for example, you work Monday to Friday, it could be like, hey, maybe one of your leg days is on the weekend. So actually it spares a little bit of freshness and reduces a little bit of fatigue going into the weekend. And that could be a bit more of where maybe a bit more of the bulk of your volume lies in that weekend session. And then maybe something like there is less volume in one of your sessions during the week. You could potentially, again, it depends on what time of the day. I imagine, given the how the question is worded, that maybe you train after work potentially. So, but I think I don't see that the bike work affecting hamstring so much. I imagine it's just going to be the quad work. And it could be that maybe, again, during that session during the week when you've been cycling, maybe you opt for exercises that are less taxing, maybe more single joint, maybe things like sissy squats, leg extensions. And then again, maybe on the weekend, you think about exercises, maybe like your more compound movements, like your hack squats, leg press, etc., where again you've got less fatigue in your legs as such, and so you can push a little bit harder on those. Um, so yeah, and again, I don't think from a volume perspective, it depends. It depends a lot on where your volume is at now, and it could be that you just reduce your volume for quads a little bit, and you take a little bit more from the week, a little bit less from the weekends. But again, there's lots of context there, and I don't know if you've got any thoughts so far, Steve.
Yeah, it's a tricky question. I was just chat GPTing to give me some sort of idea because I have no idea if 70 kilometers each day was a lot. It sounded like a lot, and it is a lot.
Mm.
Chat GPT was telling me that it might take around 2.5 to 4 hours to cycle that. And so that could be like 2 hours of cycling like twice a day. And that's a shed load of extra
Mm-hmm.
activity. And yeah, if you're doing currently none and then you're going up to cycling 4 hours or 3 hours every day, 5 times a week, man, that's going to really take you like take its toll, not just probably on legs, but you're going to have to modify probably calorie intake. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things that are going to have to be adjusted. And also, like, probably going to get really sore if that's not a distance that someone's used to doing. So I'm imagining they're not going from 0 to 70 kilometers a day. Like you have to have a
Hope
set.
not.
Like I don't know. I don't know if I think I would be able to manage cycling like 35 kilometers and then 35 kilometers again. Like I would be able to do it, but it wouldn't be comfortable, and I'd be really freaking sore the next day. So like because I never cycle, and especially like not anything along that sort of distance. So I'm struggling with that, first of all. I imagine there's some context there that we don't have that would help us answer that. That it's not probably as extreme and it's maybe a bit more of a transition than what it sounds like. And then in terms of whenever I hear something like it doesn't matter what the context is, how would I go about decreasing my volume because I'm doing X, like I'm in a calorie deficit? I never like to assume someone needs to decrease volume, like
Mm.
just straight up. So I would like we auto regulate it based off what's happening in real time. But if it is an extreme change, like this sounds like it is, I would consider like making an adjustment just ahead of time, or at least having your head, I probably need to. This is something, at least if I had a client that was doing this, I'd need to work with them through it. I couldn't
Yeah.
just come to like a formulation for it. I'd just say, it's similar to what you said. I think is a really good suggestion is the days that you're not cycling, that's where you want to put the part, like most of your leg work. And then on the other days, you just sprinkle in a little bit here or there to kind of their recovery capacity and performance. But
Mm.
I don't have much more of a thought than that. Ada's making me too hot.
At least you didn't
I,
fart this time.
no, she's actually smelling good because she's had a haircut. If you could see her, she looks really cute right now. And she's had a
Mm-hmm.
wash, so she smells good. But she's now climbing on top of my clean clothes back here. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
For the listeners who can't see, she's now sitting on top of the pile of clothes that I've got behind me. Well, she doesn't typically like to lie on clean clothes. She likes to lie on our like dirty, worn clothes because she's a dirty dog. I guess has the smell. Next question.
Next question. Right. So William Warner, I hope I said that correctly, said From what I recall, you're an experienced runner in your past life. Definitely you, Steve. Do you ever run now or want to? How would you incorporate it if you were?
So, man, past life, it definitely was a past life because I basically stopped regularly running as soon as I got hit by a van on a run. For those who don't know the story of Revive Stronger, I was on a 10-kilometer run that I'd always traditionally do, came to some traffic lights that were flashing amber. I was on for an all time personal best run for that 10K. So I just went for it, then looked, and I got hit by a van. And that led me to being in hospital, long term health conditions. But I revived stronger out of that and found bodybuilding. And that gave me a sense of control and purpose. And I'm here today living. And yeah, it's kind of crazy how that all happened. So I haven't ran for a long time, that's to say. That was hell, over 10 years ago now. I don't know what year that happened. 2010, I think it was. So it's a long, long time ago, like 15 years. Uh, so I never took running to any sort of seriousness, if that makes sense. Like bodybuilding, I got very calculated with how to do it. I learned how to bodybuild. A lot of people don't do that. They just go to the gym, they just lift, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to grow. That's kind of how I was with running. I just do runs. I do sprints. I do long runs. I just push my body and, for lack of a better term, was intuitive about it. So I've never researched how to run better or well or periodize it or like have like days where I do sprints versus longer runs, shorter runs, recovery runs. It's not part of my knowledge base. So just to put that out there. So do I ever want to run now? No. Like I'm kind of, I think you're probably similar, Mike, in that a little bit of an all or nothing mentality and getting a little bit obsessed with things. So I don't
Hmm.
try and be kind of a jack of all trades. I'm like, no, I just want to be the best I can be at this one thing. And so that's bodybuilding for me.
Yeah.
For a time, I tried to powerlift and bodybuild, and I just found I wasn't getting the best from either. And so I just wanted to focus on bodybuilding. And ever since, I've been obsessed with that. So I do actually, funny enough, I was forced to run. On occasion, I'm forced to run. You might be able to relate to this, Mike, and probably the listeners will too. But it happened to me, actually, twice this has happened to me now. But just this past weekend, me and Charlotte were going to see my new niece, who's only a few weeks old now. And we got onto the train, onto the platform, and like it was due to leave in a couple of minutes. And then they announced a change of train. So we were literally like on the furthest away platform from this train. And I had Ada, I had like a bag with some meals in for the day, and I was like running like as fast as I possibly could to make sure we got this train, because if we missed it we would have been way later and it would have sucked. This has happened to me a couple of times recently. Every time this happens, I'm so surprised at how damn good at running I am. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I ran really quick and I actually don't even feel that exhausted. So I just think I'm somewhat, I guess I have a genetic predisposition for endurance and for running in general. I've always been a good runner at school, for example, mid distance, long distance, short distance, never like amazing at any of them, but I was always like in the top like 5 of the people doing it. So I was always very good. So yeah, anyway, what am I trying to say? So I never really want to run, but sometimes I do, and I'm still fairly good at it. If I did want to incorporate running, man, it's hard to even, when sometimes it's hard to think about something when you're so far away from wanting to do it. But it somewhat relates to the past question, where it would be a case of if I was to run, I'd do it on days that I wasn't training legs, and I'd probably do it on my rest day, on my 7th day of the week, because I think that probably makes the best sense. It would definitely be a weekend because I just don't have the time midweek to be able to incorporate running at the moment. So I would do it either on Saturday in the evening, but probably I would do it on my Sunday rest day. And I wouldn't do any like crazy sprints or anything like that. I do something that was more complementary probably to my bodybuilding. So it'd be a bit more mid distance, go at like a steady pace. And I just look to progressively do that in a quicker time. And I would probably then move my leg day from Monday to Tuesday or Wednesday, because at the moment I train legs first in the week because they're, for me, the biggest priority, which is a big reason why I wouldn't want to run, because I don't want to take any resources away from my capacity to grow my legs. So that's where I'm at with it. Do you have any thoughts surrounding running? Were you ever a runner?
Yeah, I mean, I've got two thoughts. I mean, one, I just want to stick my physio hat on for a moment because for anyone who hasn't run in a long time but wants to start running again, the biggest favor you can do yourself is ease yourself into it. So like people who I see sometimes who get injuries, they're the people who maybe they haven't run in 2 years or a few years, and they all of a sudden do a 5K or a 6K, and they just start with that, and then maybe they build it up, and it's like surprise, surprise, they start to get a knee niggle or an ankle niggle or something, and it's like, hey, you're far better off. Like, what would you do if you started like a new training program or you started going to the gym for the first time after a few years? It's like you probably don't want to go straight in at 0 to 1 RAR. You probably want to have a couple of intro weeks, ease into some of the exercises, and then just really gradually start to ease yourself into like that. It's the same with running. So I would highly recommend that people do that. Some people might poo-poo something like a couch to 5K program, but honestly, it's one of the best things people can do because it's systematic. It's a systematic progression people can
See it.
just follow. And it's so good. You don't have to be like, you know, unfit as such, but it's just a good systematic progression. And yeah, my main point there is just, hey, ease yourself into it if running is something that you want to do.
Yeah,
100%.
I completely agree. I think that and a really, really good point. And I'd say that goes for anything, like any new physical endeavor, like ease yourself in for sure. Just like we do with our deload and then week one, and like allow the body to adapt to it. I can say I I didn't do that during. I've said this before on the podcast. I think during the lockdowns, there was like a
Mm.
five. Like I can't remember what it was. It was for charity, a 5K run for charity or whatever. I was in like a primer phase at the time, so I was like, I wouldn't do this at other times, but I was like, I'm maintaining anyway. Let's just go do this run. I can't remember the time I got. It was like just over 20 minutes, which is pretty fast,
Mm.
and I did not train for that at all. And I was pretty sore afterwards, but not that bad. The most sore I've got is after playing football for the first time in years, and it was like a Boxing Day football match years ago now, and I was sore for like a week after that because it could. I think I don't know if it's worse, but I think people like us, I say physically fit individuals, yourself, Mike, and me. Sometimes we think we're just invincible or very resilient, and sometimes we can really cause ourselves a problem in these situations because we are strong and we are fit and we can really push ourselves, but it doesn't mean there isn't going to be some consequences on the back end of it.
Mm. We ha You have to have like there's almost a tissue specific conditioning to a certain extent, and often what we also say in the physio world is people think they run to get fit, but you have to be fit to get run to run. And it's so true because there's a lot of repetitive impact with running, and the sort of the hidden trap with running is that it's a low barrier to entry. So it's great for people because they can literally just go out the door and run. But equally, if they haven't got sufficient tissue conditioning to tolerate the impact forces that come with running, then again, it's a slippery slope. So, and like you said, I think a couple of other traps are being young and being relatively fit because then you think you can do anything. And, you know, great, we might get away with it, but then equally, hindsight's a beautiful thing, and something might happen, and then we regret it. Um, so I'd always encourage people to have their wisdom hats on and just think about those things.
Yeah, my only note would be to not sound hypocritical, because we've talked about this as being resilient. I don't want to scare people like, oh, you're going to ruin yourself if you go for a 5 kilometer run. Like I was fine, like after it,
Mm,
but the risks are higher, especially if you really push the intensity. So yeah, that's the only additional thing I would say is like, don't think you can't go out for like a run, but like warm up and take care and try and like not go too hard out the gates. Similar to like if you deloaded and then trained to failure week one, it's not going to be the end of the world, but you'll probably find that you have to take more days off, and you could have done it a little bit more quote unquote optimally if you'd not gone overboard initially. Similar like dieting and pushing every lever, like high steps, cardio, really low food. Like eventually you're going to burn out and you're going to have to increase something. Like it's just better to avoid that in the first place.
yeah, I think you've also got to know yourself because Steve, that relatively speaking, you're quite a injury resilient person. Like you're not the type of person that gets a ton of injuries all the time. Whereas there might be another type of person who unfortunately is a little bit more injury prone. They are a little bit more prone to picking up niggles and stuff. And it's like, right, well, for that person, one is running something they're thinking of consistently doing. And then secondly, if it, is it, or is it a one-off? And, again, they've just got to weigh those pros and cons in their head, know the type of person that they are, and then come to, a decision.
Absolutely. Next question.
Let's go.
So we have already covered this one, so I'll get to the one after that. And this is a great question for you, Mike, because you have a particular interest in this. So this is from B. And she has asked, what are the best cues you have been given when practicing your bodybuilding poses? Oh, I have one in mind that comes immediately.
Oh, you tell yours first, because I'm
So
mulling
this
them
is
over.
probably the biggest tip, at least. I don't know if you can call this a cue, but basically don't pose at 100%. So don't contract muscles as hard as you possibly can. Pull it back to an 8 out of 10, 80, 90%. And you'll be able to basically get everything you want from 100% without fatiguing excessively quickly and kind of losing your poise on stage.
That is a great one. And that helped me think of mine, actually, because one great piece of advice is smile, but then try to breathe through your teeth. And it just means that you might not get out of breath as quickly, and you can hold the pose for a little bit longer. Whilst if you were just to hold your breath the whole time, you might get out of breath and then you'll have to relax and you might lose your position. So just, smiling but breathing through your teeth, that helped me at least a lot.
Yeah, I think you said this to me at one point about how am I breathing during my posing. It's so funny. It's similar to like how I breathe when I'm training. I don't think about it really. It's just I'm just doing the breathing that accommodates the activity I'm trying to do. But some people really need help with those sort of things, like training. Like I've had to be like, don't hold your breath that long. Like you don't need to be holding your breath when you're not under load, for example, at the top of a hack squat, or even like you don't have to brace super hard like a powerlifter. So it's so funny because like, even if you ask me now, like, how do I breathe when I pose? I don't know. It just works. But that's cool. That's a great cue as well. We'll leave it at one each. I think that's good.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So our guy, Dr. Jared Rice, what is the lowest calories macros could go when dieting?
Cool.
That's for you? Is that for you? That's you. That's
Anyone.
to you. Yeah. Well, both of us.
You asked me. So in terms of, I'm not thinking about it. I'm thinking about what's the lowest we would take someone. I'm not necessarily thinking he's saying, wait, what is the lowest? Could you? Yeah. So he's not asking what's the lowest you've gone or what's the lowest you would go to. It's like, as a coach, what's the lowest calories and macros you would take someone when they're dieting? That's kind of what I'm taking it as.
Yeah.
So for me, basically, how do I put this? So there is some rules to this, and I can't remember the calorie number off the top of my head. You might know it, Mike, but it's that number that comes from red S. So that kind of, what's it called? When you have a certain amount of output and wait, why is my brain gone completely blank? I wanted to define what red S stood for, and the R is completely gone from my head.
Relative.
Energy deficit. Relative, that's the one. Relative energy deficit in sport. So that's kind of what do you want to say, Mike?
No, it was relative energy deficiency in sport.
Cool. Yeah. So there is a number per a certain amount of body weight that you can do a multiplier of how many calories not to kind of go under to start exhibiting lots of these. But to be honest, in practice, when you are competing and you ask this question, it's almost like there isn't one. It's like if you're a competitive bodybuilder, you just got to get in shape for stage. Like that is where you got to go. Obviously, there's going to be limits there because you want to come in your best shape possible. So you're not going to take them to a number of calories that leads to their performance tanking, lack of adherence, losing body fat too fast so that they're losing muscle tissue. So it's kind of one of those. There isn't like a hard rule, I would say, for people. I will say from experience, when I see someone getting below 10 calories per pound, I'm starting to get a little concerned. As a rule of thumb, 10 to 11 times your body weight in pounds is a good rough estimate of someone's basal metabolic rate. So the number of calories they would burn minus any activity. So just at rest, how many calories do they burn? So if you're getting below that figure, that's a bit spicy.
Mm.
And I would often consider, hey, how is adherence, that sort of thing. So that's where my head goes with this question. I don't know if you have any other thoughts. I know I kind of, maybe didn't explain myself particularly well.
No, I think you did. And to be honest, I was thinking the exact same thing in terms of there is no cutoff other than, are they not tolerating it? Can they, have they, is there signs that the client can't handle it? And I'm not saying that from a negative sense of, oh, they can't handle it, but just literally they're not tolerating the calories that they're on. Like you said, their training performance is starting to tank. Lifestyle, their life is having a serious detrimental impact. Maybe psychologically, they're really struggling. And it's like, right, hey, maybe we just either agree that, hey, this is where we draw the line into kind of how far that we go. But also, I think it's a good indicator to know there might be other options on the table. You just don't know. Maybe it's like you just put pause on things. Maybe like what we did in my most recent fat loss phase, where like, hey, let's just take, 4 days of refeeds. Maybe we just take a couple of weeks at maintenance and just either push the timeline of the shows back even into the next year or something, and then go from there. So it doesn't always have to mean like, oh, hard stop. It might mean like, hey, we just need to press the pause button before we reevaluate things.
Sorry, I realized my mic. I put myself on mute because I just wanted to look up this number. So there's a couple of key thresholds. I just wanted to bring these up because I was frustrated they didn't have them offhand. But I do think the fact that I don't have them at the top of mind is because the specific relevance for what we do, like you don't often get to this point. You can bear them in mind, but I don't think it's like, again, you're a competitive athlete. There's more things that are barriers to entry at this point. So basically, it comes to clinical studies have exhibited negative health implications from low LEA. Forgive me, I'm kind of struggling to know what that stands for.
Low
In
energy
as
availability.
I was thinking it was that LEA, so low energy availability, in as little as 5 days of less than 30 calories per kilogram of fat-free mass a day. So it's 30 calories is like of fat-free mass per kilo per day. So 45 calories per kilogram of fat-free mass a day is considered sufficient level of energy availability for most athletes. So you could use that as a rough, like, hey, especially for non-competitors, I probably don't want to be going below that number. But it's interesting because that doesn't take into consideration their output, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to take into consideration all that. And I think probably you're better off looking at some of the symptoms of Red S versus focusing too hard on that number, because there's limitations to that number. So obviously if they're losing their menstrual cycle as a female, high levels, like these are diet fatigue symptoms, like high levels of fatigue, high levels of food focus, that sort of thing, low mood, difficulty sleeping, all of that sort of thing. So yeah, anyway, I think
I would just add to that I don't think to a certain degree, because every single bodybuilder at a certain stage is in Red S regardless. It's just
so long as they're lean
whether
enough.
if they're lean enough, exactly. But
Some might not be.
but because if they've been in a deficit for a long period of time, that you're going to be in Red S, unfortunately. So correct me if I'm wrong, but again, like with females, there is going to be the loss of the menstrual cycle.
Not necessarily.
No.
Doesn't always happen, I'll say that.
Okay.
But common.
Yeah. So I think I think everyone, if they get lean enough, etc., and it's been going on for long enough, then I think everyone's going to be in Red S to a certain degree.
I have just an example. Do you remember my client Isabel, who was on stage?
Yes.
Was it last year, early last year? Or it might have been the year before now. I can't remember, but she's like crazy competitive, right? And she was a first timer. She never lost her menstrual cycle. Like, she is made for this sport, man.
Interesting.
She won her show. She would have won the overall. She didn't understand some of the rules and things, so didn't end up being able to be in the overall. But the person who won the overall came second to her in her class. So it's like she would have won the overall. So and the fact that her body's that resilient to have not lost her menstrual cycle is really good news. But yeah, if you're a bodybuilder, if you're fit body, if you're maybe if you're figure or if you're bikini, because they're you hold on to a little bit more body fat, you might not lose your menstrual cycle. But yeah, anyway, it's very common, like you said. And for a male, like, yeah, I mean, I didn't have a what's it called, libido for a long time. Like that just completely went. So anyway, shall I ask you the next question?
Yeah. What's the next
So
question?
this is from Manji Machine, has
Banter
asked,
machine.
have you favored different carb sources for around training versus just random starches, veg, fruit, simple, complex, and only account for grams? So do you ever strongly consider the source of carbohydrate when you're consuming it, Mike?
Personally, not really, because it's never really impacted me to a significant degree. I would say I have my go-tos. So I actually don't have carbohydrates before I train because typically my last meal of the day is more of a larger meal. So actually I wake up and I go to the gym quite early, so I'm still quite energized from the previous day. And I tend to find that lasts me. So what I do tend to do is when either my sessions are getting a little bit longer, or if I'm kind of maybe deeper into, a mass, then I will sometimes have an intra workout drink with some dextrose, and then I'll kind of have my post training meal, which will tend to be like oats or something like that. But apart from that, I've never really played around. I definitely do play around. I definitely do have other recommendations to clients depending on their specific circumstances, but that's just me.
I will say, Mike, that there are arguments and theories based off, I would say, mechanistic data to why you might argue there's times of which you might want to have certain carbohydrates. For example, if you want to maximize like glycogen stores, you might want to have something like a fruit and a starch pre-workout,
Mm.
so that you get some of the fructose as well, and the like multi-transportable carbohydrates, I think it's called. So you could make like an argument that you should be doing that, and that obviously, yeah, you should have dextrose intra-workout, that sort of thing. So that's readily available blood sugar for your workout. What I will say is, and the times at which that'll be most beneficial is like in a diet, end of prep, what have you. What I will say is, so often adherence trumps all of that, and those little things that you try and do just don't seem to hold particularly. Like it's a nice, because as especially natural bodybuilders, we try and like maximize everything, dot every I, cross every T. But I will say is, a lot of those, like, I don't even know if you could call them one percenters. One theoretical one percenters often just get like lost, and it might be helping in theory, but I don't know if in practice it really makes that much difference. I don't know if
Mm.
you agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny as you were saying that. It's like I definitely understand the theory behind it, but again, does the pros of that outweigh some of the impacts on either lifestyle or just personal preferences, etc.? And it's like, oh, I don't know, you know. So yeah, I'm with you on that one.
One of the big ones that comes to mind just in this frame is, almost always clients will have a large amount of their calories in the evening for dinner, quite close to bed. In theory, not ideal from like
Yeah.
a chrononutrition perspective, less insulin sensitive at that time, potential negatives for sleep. But I think probably it's exactly as you said, that gets trumped. Those small theoretical benefits get trumped by adherence, enjoyment. Like just the fact that you get to have that low stress, big like feed before bed, something incredibly like chilling, like the stress reduction you get from that and enjoyment you get from that. And if that allows you to adhere to your program long term, it's probably trumps anything else. You know, it's kind
Yeah.
of, yeah, it's something to contemplate at least. So anyway, I'm kind of similar to you, Mike, in regards
I
to answering that question.
Yeah, I think just for one final thing from me personally is that I've also got a bit of a cast iron stomach, so I've had a larger meal at the end of the day since I've literally as long as I can remember since being at school, and I've never I could also eat a big meal before training and I wouldn't feel nauseous, I wouldn't feel bad. I know that other people have, more digestive
Do you have an
sensitivities around
example?
like.
of
What
a
for the?
big meal and how close to training, just because I want to know like how cast iron is this stomach.
Well, I haven't done it in a long time, but I do you know what? I could put down probably 200 grams of oats before training, and I probably would be fine.
How close?
I don't know. I, I probably I
You
don't
can't
know.
just be throwing out these things, Mike, of how cast iron your stomach is and then not have an example.
I don't know, but it's because I haven't actually done it. But I
So
haven't
you can't
actually.
actually say you have you could do anything
But
before pre-workout. You haven't done
but
it.
just like again, I know that my digestive system is good, so I don't know, I couldn't give a specific example, but maybe you can give me an example. I don't know, but
my
yeah, I would say that
closest
yeah.
My
Go
closest
on.
would be when we ate in New York. No, it was in Boston. We had the American breakfast at the diner and a bit of a donut, so it was quite a large amount of calories. I think if I'd immediately needed to go and train after eating that, I would not have been good for legs. I needed the like hour and the bit of a walk to allow it to at least digest to before we got to training. I don't
Mm.
know if you felt that way or if you were like, yeah, no, I could have just literally got out of the diner and trained.
I think I could be making this up. I feel I could have. Would I? Would I have been at my best? Probably not. I think I probably that extra hour was nice to let it settle, but I could have trained if I wanted to. I wouldn't have vomited, um, to put it that way.
Yeah, I've actually never been sick training. I remember people at school when we'd have PE, sometimes like there was a few people that were sick, and I think they're examples of what you mentioned where you have to know yourself. And that's probably a bit of an extreme, and maybe you're at the extreme of the other way. But I think the biggest thing you want to make sure of pre-workout, I think you probably agree with this, Mike, is that you're not eating in a proximity or an amount of food or a type of food that's going to lead to you feeling bloated and in digestive distress during your workout. You want to feel like, hey, things are good in there and you can focus on performing. And then you also don't want to go into training feeling underfed and hungry. There's been direct research looking at that. I know we've both
Hmm.
kind of posted about it where they found, hey, actually, it seems to be most important that people feel like they've eaten something and they're not feeling hungry within their workout, which makes sense, I think. Like if you ever think about like if you're feeling hungry in a workout, it never feels particularly productive.
Mm, definitely. No, totally agree on that one.
So yeah, I don't
Right.
think for me, in terms of my answer, I think similar to you. Uh, the only time I think about it maybe a little bit more heavily is if I was on very low carbohydrates towards the end of prep, and I'd probably try and have a starchy sauce before a workout. So I just had a little bit more glycogen available during that session versus, and other meals might just be like veggies and protein and a bit of fats. So I'd kind of purposely put a bit more pre-workout. And I tend to recommend trying to put an emphasis on more carbohydrates around training sessions, but I ultimately don't think it's a big deal.
Mm, yeah, I'm exactly the same. I recommend it, but equally, um, the individual hopefully will know themselves and needs to know what works for them, and the performance will dictate that. And I think it will also, if people are open-minded, because maybe something that you've always said to me and that we've done is like sometimes you've said to me like, "Hey, Mike, just try it," and sometimes I've tried it and I've been like, "Oh no, actually, I've noticed it has been, my training has been better when I've done this or I've incorporated an inch workout shape." It's like, okay, so yeah, there's a degree of both in terms of know yourself, but also be open-minded, experiment, see what happens.
Yeah, give it a bit of time as well when you do experiment. I've had that with clients for some of these things where I see something they're doing and I'm like, that looks pretty suboptimal. And they're like, no, it's fine. And I'm like, can we just try? And then they try it. And if they just try it once, it's like, oh, it didn't help. I'm like, just give it another week or so. And then they're like, oh, now it's helping. So do give it a bit of
Mm,
time and that'll help. How are you for time, Mike? You got time for another one last question?
yeah, I've got time for a couple more if you have.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do it.
L- Let's go.
Did I ask the last one? No, you did. No, I did.
You did. The underscore anonymous, or maybe it's anonymous, but I think it's anonymous. Do you still take any pump products pre-workout? Are they worth the cost?
No and no.
Yep.
What about you, Mike?
No and no. Caffeine?
uh, I will expand on. Yeah. I mean, you could argue caffeine is a vasoconstrictor, right? So you could argue it's
Well,
actually not
exactly. Oh,
helping the
there you
pump.
go. Oh
But
no.
Yeah. Anyway, so what was I going to say? So no, I don't. And the reason I don't is when I was taking them for full transparency, they were free because I was sponsored by a supplement company that I could get them as part of my order. But I was including them as part of my order because I liked them, but I think it was more of a placebo slash just why not? And they taste good. You know what? So often I find with a lot of supplements, they're not really doing anything, but they taste good and they
Hmm.
make you feel good. It's like I think about like a greens powder. I haven't tried AG1, but I bet it tastes good and it makes you
Oh, it
feel
does,
like
yeah.
you're doing something good. Oh, have you had it?
Years ago. So,
Ah,
but literally years ago. And it does
so
taste good.
yeah. I imagine it tastes good and you feel like you're doing something good for yourself. It's similar to like a pump product. Again, it tastes good. You feel like you're doing something beneficial for yourself, or an electrolyte product. It's like, oh, it tastes good. And yeah, I feel like I'm doing something good for myself. And like, hey, there's some like very, like, it's hard to argue against, oh, hydration is more than just water. So electrolytes are going to be beneficial. But when you actually dig into it, like, how much sodium does it have in it? How much sodium do you lose during a workout? How much sodium are you already consuming? Or like again, AG1, like yeah, it has these like what are the ingredients? Oh, it's a proprietary blend. Do you even know what you're getting? Are you eating plenty of fruit and veg? Is it potentially leading to eating less fruit and veg? It could be a negative. Anyway, so with pump products, again, I would look at the ingredient list and it's like like citrulline malate. It's just very mixed. Like there's evidence suggesting it does something, and then there's some that says it does nothing, and it's like, so is it worth the cost? It's actually very expensive, so
Hmm.
probably not. Nitrates, I think, are worth a look into, but they aren't often in pre-workout products. You normally have to like either eat them through your diet, like we have beetroots and spinach and that sort of thing, or you need to use like beet it, I think it's called, like that juice.
Mm.
Like you can get like shots and stuff, but they're expensive, man. Like they're really
Really?
expensive, so it's
Mm.
pretty prohibitory there. So yeah. Anyway, that's why I don't. I think that if they're free to you, they could be worth just hey, why not? Or actually, I could argue not even then because potentially because it's made in factories and it's not third party tested and you don't know, it could have something banned for sport within there and you might be getting something that you don't intend to be getting, especially if you're in the US where the market is less regulated than the UK. The risk isn't really worth it. And I now no longer, like, I try and recommend clients, especially if they're a competitor and during their season, like I'm like, it's just not worth it. For like,
No.
if you get randomly drug tested and somehow something in that product is flagging, man, and like it's really not worth it. So yeah, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts, Mike. I
No,
rambled.
well, no, well said, Steve. And particularly in the UK, so with WADA testing and the UK Anti-Doping Agency, they have this sort of saying which is called 100% me, which basically means the person has full responsibility for what they're putting in their body. So if someone said, "Oh, I didn't know X was in that supplement," that's not an excuse. You get banned regardless.
Yeah.
So again, it just means like, hey, you've got no footing, and like you said, Steve, it's just not worth taking the risk if you're competing in natural bodybuilding.
Yeah, it's frustrating because I think a lot of people don't realize that, and the cheaper products are the ones that are more likely going to be at risk of having contaminants as well. So, oh man, I had a thought that came to mind on this subject, Mike.
Mm.
Um, did you know that GLP-1 agonists, I think it's agonists is the term. Yeah, agonists, like semaglutide and stuff like that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yep, yep.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, Dr. Crystal came on the podcast, talked about it. And so, did you know they're not currently banned by WADA?
I wasn't sure. I
I
wasn't
looked
sure.
it up because it's come up on the podcast a few times. They're on the watch list, but it doesn't look like they're banned. And I'm like, my mind is almost blown. I'm like, I would have really thought these would have been banned, at least in natural bodybuilding. I can understand maybe why WADA specifically, because it's very specific to bodybuilding, right? Because you're losing body
Mm.
fat and you're trying to get lean. So I'd just be interested if anyone tries to utilize them in their preps.
I think I can understand maybe the reasoning because if all natural bodybuilding federations are affiliated with WADA, WADA essentially um, the reasons for a banned substance going on the banned substance list is if it fulfills certain criteria, such as it's harmful to health, it's anti-sportsman-like, and like there might be a couple of other factors, but some of those things, and it might be like it's on the watch list because there are some concerns, but ultimately it's not hitting that criteria at the moment according to current research. So that could be why. But like you said, specific to bodybuilding, it is a competitive advantage. And so, but then the other thing we've got to think about with that is access. So if there's relatively equal access and everyone has equal access to it, then ultimately it might not be a competitive advantage. And so therefore it doesn't need to be banned. So yeah, those are just kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, I'm just very interested to see if people start trying to use it.
Mm,
And I specifically think it would be useful during a post comp period.
hmm.
Because when your appetite's at its worst, it's like post comp when everything
Yeah.
just gets the floodgates open up. And imagine just actually being able to eat to fullness because you had this GLP-1. My
Yeah.
concern would be that people would then stay too lean for too long. And I do think there's some concerns with using. You just need to dose it correctly, and I think you'd probably be golden. To be honest, it'll just make hunger a non-issue during a prep and post-prep. Even
Yeah,
off-season would probably help people too.
definitely.
Yeah.
What what are your thoughts? And I know it's a little bit kind of tangent, but do you think that by using the GLP-1 agonist, that people aren't then building the skill set of self-regulation almost? So, by going through that process without it, you're having to build that kind of, discipline and self-regulation on your own. Do you think we miss that out by taking
I
a
th-
GLP-1 agonist?
I think to a certain degree it does take out some of the benefits. Like it sounds weird, but you get benefits from restriction in life, similar to many religions go through that period of like Lent, for example, where they like you choose something to not have, because
Mm,
then you kind of respect it a bit more and maybe you actually enjoy it even more and manage it better later in life. So I do think there's something about you lose that management of hunger and appetite, and so you don't get the benefits that that could bring. But I guess the other thing is you still experience all the other diets fatigue symptoms. You might not be hungry at below 10% body fat, but you're certainly low energy. Your performance could still
mm,
tank, so on and so forth. And I think so long as people dieted sensibly and you kept high protein, you still ate diet foods, high fiber diet, that sort of thing, I think you're probably still good. But one implication, I've just thought of one random implication, peak week could completely fuck you because
mm.
now you have to get in. Imagine trying to do a rapid backload. When I was eating over 1,000 grams of carbohydrates, that was so easy to do. But if you had a GLP-1, man, suddenly you're like, man, I could barely eat 200 grams of carbs, even though I want to. So yeah, that's. Oh man, yeah, I'm going to be interested to see if people try and use these, and they're gonna. I'm gonna let other people knock against some of those issues and learn from their mistakes if they do. So I'm not thinking to go down there. I don't even know how you get hold of it in the UK easily either. Like you said, access. I guess you have to get prescribed it, and I don't
It
know
is,
if they're
yeah.
going to prescribe it to someone who, you're like, you're pretty lean. Why do you need a GPL-1?
You have to, I'm pretty sure I might be getting this wrong, but you do need a prescription and it needs to be medical related. Like you either need to be over a certain weight or you need to be like have diabetes or something.
Yeah, interesting.
But yeah, I
Should
don't
we
know. Watch
cover,
this space.
yeah, one more question and then call it
Yeah,
there?
let's do that. So here we go.
Oh, it's me, isn't it? Oh, no,
Yeah.
it's you. Wait, no, it's me.
Oh,
I'm just wondering how we got into that subject. I was like, where's that question related to GPL-1 agonist? It's not there. So Kevin.Clark underscore has asked, what are the indicators that you are either at the lower intervention point or higher than your intervention point for your calories and body weight? Oh, this is nice because it reflects a lot of what we've spoken about.
yeah, absolutely. So I think indicators for that you're at the lower intervention point would be if essentially things are getting really hard. Like maybe you're starting to um experience maybe more food focus, more diet fatigue symptoms. Maybe the scale weight is just being really resistant to go down. I think those maybe other things like your overall NEAT is starting to reduce, and essentially your body is just resisting and fighting you. There are a lot of markers where your body is just trying to fight you, trying to lose more weight. I think that for me would be indicators for, hey, you're probably towards your lower intervention point. Likewise, the reverse would be true for the higher intervention point. So maybe it's like, oh, your appetite is really starting to go. You're kind of, again, you're really having to maybe potentially ramp up calories to try and encourage the scale weight to go up higher. Um, those are the sorts of things that, again, would maybe indicate to me like, hey, maybe we're at your higher intervention point there.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Look at those diet fatigue symptoms in regards to, like you said, hunger, food focus, energy levels, libido, those sleep, how those are going. And something I do, we've spoken about it before, is like scoring those out of five being normal, and then rate them accordingly. When you're seeing more of those creep up and rear their ugly head, you're probably noticing that you're below it. I can't say one of the other indicators outside of those like biofeedback things, I would say the same on either ends of the spectrum is a resilience to the goal. So for example, if you're at the upper end of your intervention point, you'll start to find that you will maintain on higher calories and you have to push calories higher and higher and higher to see anything happen. And the other thing is true on the way down. So you'll probably have like a body weight that like once I hit X body weight, I just really have to like increase steps or push food way lower, much more than I previously would have had to. Whereas when you're within your kind of upper and lower intervention points, things are much more smooth. You make one small adjustment, the body's very happy to take it on. I kind of talk about it like you can think about being between your upper and lower intervention point as like being on the freeway on a road. And then as you try and you can go down different lanes and stuff and you're all good, it's free and easy. But when you try and get off the road, it's like being off track. And suddenly you're hit with all this like hurdles. You have to make many more changes and adjustments. It's just far harder. So I would say, and that's assuming you're doing a lot of things right, because you could be exhibiting some levels of diet fatigue, like hunger and food focus. But if your diet's trash, that's probably why, right? But yeah, so you have to take that into consideration too, but that's where my head goes.
That's a great analogy. I like it. Totally makes sense.
Nice. I think we
There we
have
go.
a number of questions left, but again, we can save those for next time because otherwise these podcasts, I don't like trying to answer them really quickly and I don't like looking over them and rushing them. So we're probably better off calling it.
Some of them are longer questions. They're not they're not rapid fire questions as such. So I think we are better saving them for next time. So there's 4, so it's not too many, and we'll get to them next time.
Cool. Nice. So guys, as always, thank you so much for listening. As ever, if you aren't in the hypertrophic time chamber and you want to ask questions like these, then please do join. And don't worry, I don't inundate you with spam and everything like that. It's normally good little insights and plugs and things, and you get a little bit of an inside look on some of my processes. And if you aren't following Mike over on Instagram, what's your handle over there, Mike?
At Mike Revive Stronger. I'd love if you follow me, guys. And just thanks for tuning in.
And of course, follow me at Revive Stronger. If you search Revive Stronger, we should both pop up, which is great. And as ever, leave us a comment. Let us know if you're PlayStation, Nintendo, Xbox, all that good stuff. And as ever, any feedback, thumbs up, subscriptions, we appreciate you. And we'll catch you in the next episode where maybe I have a little bit of a tan, hopefully not any sort of a red head, basically, because I'm nervous about my bald head being in the sun.
Maybe you'll have that nice glow. Do you remember kind of the day after the Netherlands show where you just had this lovely skin tone? Maybe we'll just
I won't
be like
as tanned as that. I tan okay, but not that well. I go a bit yellow, weirdly enough. So yeah, I'll probably have a slight tint, but not.
So you'll
nothing
come back
too
like
crazy.
Bart Simpson.
Not that yellow. Watch this space. Maybe I will. Cheers, guys. We'll catch you in the next one.
See you later.